And turning now to boycotts. Boycotts have been a hot topic of conversation lately. You might think they're pointless or possibly a powerful tool for change. But before we talk about whether they're effective or not, let's take a moment to define what a boycott actually looks like. From the American Revolution to the Civil Rights Movement to consumer boycotts, a call to action seems to be an American tradition. Take a look.
Our city commission has flatly turned down our offer to work with an interracial committee on the matter of seating on our city buses. And now that the bus company has deserted us, it is now incumbent upon us, the council, to provide transportation for our people. Ours is not a white and black battle. Instead, it is a struggle between justice and injustice. It will be a victory for democracy.
From bus boycotts and sit-ins in the 1950s and 60s in the South to the Native American movement in the 70s, those are just a few examples of how boycotts in America have been used as a tool for social and political change. To this day, the United States government has a decades-old economic embargo on Cuba, just as the Arab League has imposed a trade embargo on Israel since its founding. And that brings us to more modern forms of boycotting. We see it all the time, targeting businesses for their political and social stances.
We're all truly blessed at the same time to have a leader like President Trump.
Remember when Goya Foods was getting backlash for the CEO's relationship with Donald Trump? But that negative publicity might have actually helped the company. And it hasn't been that long since Chick-fil-A was getting called out for its donations to anti-LGBTQ groups. But it seems like people kept buying their chicken anyway, not really affecting the bottom line.
I probably spend like $50 a month. Then I reduced my Chick-fil-A intake when the first round of Chick-fil-A is anti-gay came out.
More recent boycotts have gone the other way on gay rights.
We're opposed to the agenda, the indoctrination. That really isn't their jurisdiction to be raising our children and teaching them about sex.
And ransacking of Target's Pride section during Pride Month.
Honestly, Target, what is going on? This is pretty disgusting.
These are like naked people in shirts.
But Bud Light is taking the biggest hit of all of them, and this boycott is actually working. Sales are down 25% from last year.
And joining us now is Maurice Schweitzer. He is a professor of operations, information, and decisions at the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania. Professor, thanks so much for joining us here. So I got to ask, I mean, looking at all those different boycotts, what makes a boycott work and what makes a boycott fizzle out?
Yeah, for a boycott to be effective, it takes leadership, coordination, and persistence. And on the other side, it takes easy alternatives and a company that's sensitive to the press. In general, boycotts don't work because people lack attention to it. They're unlikely to actually change their mode of transportation or their consumer behavior. So people might try to boycott tuna, or they might try to boycott Target. They might try to boycott all kinds of companies, or BP for the oil spill, but then find themselves reverting to convenient patterns. And we tend not to see boycotts work most of the time. And this is especially the case, you mentioned Goya before, where in some cases they're what we call two-sided boycotts, where there are people, for example, that might like that Goya was affiliated with Trump when other people call for a boycott, or Patagonia sued the Trump administration when the Trump administration shrank the Bears Ears National Monument, and their sales actually went up. So we see two-sided boycotts where people are taking one of two sides, and so a call to boycott might not actually harm the company. And then we see, yeah, go ahead.
Real quick, sorry, you're talking about two-sided in one way, but that makes me think of kind of just calling it how it looks right now. It looks like boycotts that are coming from the left have not been effective recently, and yet boycotts that are coming from the right have been pretty effective. What do you think that it's an overgeneralization, but do you think that's the case? And if so, why?
Well, I think that's interesting. So I think So compared to one-sided boycotts, like when people are boycotting SeaWorld or BP after an oil spill, it's not as if people are taking the other side of, the mistreatment of animals or an oil spill. But here, I think you have a good point. That is, we're seeing a rise in the effectiveness of some kinds of boycotts, although most of them haven't really been very effective. So I think the Bud Light example recently, I think it comes in the midst of a very intense culture war and the ramp up of a presidential election. So the Republican primary started, and I think the issue of liberal ideals, I think, is coming at a very intense time. And so that's why the Target example, the Bud Light example, I think are running into a very different landscape than we've seen in other cases.
Perfect. Professor, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.